Well, hello. This is Glenn Greenidge and Tom Pope, and we are here having a conversation about Dr. Martin Luther King and his contribution to community. And so I'd like to start off the conversation with saying that when you look at letters from a Birmingham jail, you begin to really see his connection and his thoughts around community, around if there's an injustice anywhere, there's an injustice everywhere. And so his whole theme of being there in Birmingham is like, why are you here? You're an outsider. You don't live here in Birmingham. But as we know, Birmingham is not that far from Atlanta. And when you think about what he was going through at that point in time, you begin to see his connection, not just to his home community of Atlanta, but is really anywhere that injustice was displayed. He felt it as part of his outreach.
I'm just thinking on a little wider scale. You mentioned the idea that if a community is not helped or is being disadvantaged, it affects all of the communities throughout the country. Isn't that concept very similar to the South African Ubuntu, where any pain we inflict also inflicts pain on us?
Mm-hmm.
We're all connected.
Yeah, yeah. And Course in Miracles talks about it. So there's a couple of different theologies that look at the connection of all of us. You know, the other thing that I think about Martin Luther King, and you know, I'm reminded of Barack Obama in terms of being an organizer, you know, a community organizer, because when you look at Dr. Martin Luther King, at 23 years old, was out there in the world being a champion for the people, and when you get that kind of connection, you and the impact, you know, yes, he was a great orator, but it was also the message. The messages were very, very poignant. They were very strong, and he criticized when there was need to criticize. I mean, you know, this non-violence was excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you. Non-violence was his key, but non-violence was a means to an end for change. And so when you look at that and you look at, you know, social discord, and you look at reminds me actually Black Lives Matters movement, when you consider the protests, although I think we had some agitators that were a part of that had it become violent. But I think the theme of demonstrating nonviolence, civil disobedience, is one of the things that I look back to the 60s and the civil rights movement, and we haven't really seen a movement like that really since the civil rights movement. You know, the outcry and the pouring out
On
into,
a smaller scale, maybe with Reverend Barber in North Carolina.
yeah, yeah, but not to the not from a
Right.
national standpoint, did it really.
One item that I don't think is mentioned enough is the type of leadership. We often see leaders who, when they're confronted by a problem, will be very conservative in terms of the approach. How do we best bring sides together? they won't be bold to go out on a limb. Now I'm thinking, how different is that with MLK? Um, I think he shocked a lot of the society when he decided to go um, against the war in Vietnam. But he was addressing that as a major issue because it was not being spoken about in the media, even at that time. Things were being done in terms of oppression by the military state in America. And he was bold enough to go on a limb and say, we can't solve other things if we don't solve this.
Absolutely, absolutely, and you're right. He did go out on a limb, and he did his advocacy, and I think that I'll say this, and I think that that activity was part of his demise because now he was not only was he an advocate for blacks, but he became an advocate for poor people because who was going and dying in Vietnam were people who didn't have the rich father family that could get them out or could send them to Canada or wherever they could to get them out of going to Vietnam. So when you look at Vietnam, you look at it from the racial component of the military that was there, and you look at a lot of black and brown people who were the losing their lives disproportionately. Um, sort of kind of like the pandemic, you know,
Well,
which
that's another aspect of boldness. Um, he doesn't stay within the confines of the racial problem. He expands to look at poverty. Um,
yes,
and that's the reason he goes to Memphis. He's supporting the sanitation workers.
yes, yeah, yeah,
Now, I have a memory. I think it was somewhere 68, 69. Maybe it was the um, campaign with Nixon. Um, I was a little bit surprised to see the amount of blue collar workers supporting the Republican Party. How could that happen? That happens because MLK is no longer around. Had he succeeded with helping the sanitation workers, that suddenly brings a different approach to the average mentality of the blue collar worker. The blue collar worker now sees, oh, we have a way out.
mm-hmm.
But without that, they're more susceptible to listening to the media that might be in support of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it, the organizing the Poor People's Campaign, when you think about it, what he was doing was organizing the masses, and I think that that got a lot of people scared and nervous enough to sanction his demise. And the other part of it is when you think about it, there's also some movement even within the black community with him and Malcolm X, who were considered extremes, are now considering, working together because there are pieces where nonviolence made sense, and there were pieces where the threat of violence made sense, and they were looking to see how they can come together and work together. So when you look at the where he was headed and the whole human dignity, because that's really what he was appealing to, was your rights as a human being. And so he elevated it from a racial to a human being entity, us being all the same and as one. So I think that those were some of the considerations as he matured, as he learned, as he experienced himself and the development of other leaders at that time.
Now, we've talked about the idea of helping the poor people as a major issue. Why hasn't Reverend Barber's movement been developed even beyond North Carolina? We have some people who are aware of him outside of North Carolina and outside of the left movement, the progressive movement. But is this a problem because of the corporate media today just ignoring him? Or is there a bigger issue? Why can't this capture the way MLK captured the public?
I would probably not knowing that campaign as well, I would say that it would be the media, because the media has a way of filtering and suppressing what they want. And I'm not sure that they're ready for another movement of organizing of people without the means. And I think that scares a lot of people who are in power.
What would you say in closing?
I'd say in closing that the principles and the thinking of Dr. Martin Luther King is still relevant today, just as he used Mahatma Gandhi's nonviolence. All of those things are still relevant today in today's society. There's still um, uh, inadequacies in terms of equality. There's a lot of factions that still need to receive the support and the strength of organizing, and nonviolence protesting is still something that is usable and very and I think a very strong negotiating tool to at least get you at the table so you can have the conversations you need to have.
Well, those are our thoughts. If you like what you've been hearing, get in touch with us at Community and Social Change on Facebook.
Thank you.